So reminder, precepts. We've been doing precepts for years. I never intended it. It just seemed to want to keep going, meeting once a month and taking up one of the Bodhisattva precepts. And we came to the end of the 16 Bodhisattva precepts this last time, and normally we would take a break. But I just felt like in this time in the world, this is not a time to take a break from the precepts. We just all need them to be reminded over and over again. Just how to be a true and good human being. So we're going to start again tonight, but it's just, it's like an ENSO. It just keeps turning and going. So people who have been coming, keep coming, and people who are doing Jukai keep coming, and a couple people emailed that there may be people here for the first time, and that's all really lovely. We'll all just keep helping each other be good human beings. The precepts are the heart of our lineage. If you, because we are in a Zen tradition, and it is a tradition that has rituals, beautiful rituals, that for some people it's important. For other people, the ritual of showing up every day and living your life fully and deeply, that's the ritual of it. And sometimes these other rituals help, but it's up to each person. But if you do Jukai, there's going to be a Jukai at the end of June. You take the precepts. If you do lay entrustment, there's going to be lay entrustment in October. It's the precepts. If you do Shiho Dharma transmission, it's the precepts. If you die, it's the precepts. If you get married or a kid gets born, that's one of the sweetest things I ever did was do precepts with little Sasha at Tassajara. She's a little tiny being, Alicia. When I got ordained, and Norman Fisher said, and he said to others, and I think it's any kind of living by vow, I really love the language, it's about humility, being of service, and seeing each person as Buddha. I just felt like, that's my life. That's what I've always been devoted to, and so on we go. So we did, thank you. I really want to thank Chelsea, I want to thank Erica, I want to thank Marilyn, and I want to thank all of you for taking such good care of the Sangha over these last couple of weeks. And I really look forward to, I haven't had time yet to listening to their talks that were held in the Eightfold Path and within the framework of right action and right livelihood. Today we're going to hold what we're going to talk about in the framework of right effort, which I want to say something about in a minute. But part of the tradition of when you do Shiho, Dharma transmission, is that those persons are invited to give a talk of just what's important, what comes forward from this experience. So Debbie's going to give a talk today, and Mary Ann's going to give a talk on Thursday. Others involved are being shy about giving talks, which is probably a good mark, but not a good mark. But anyway, it is what it is. So we have what we have. Yeah.
Would you announce, please, about the next all-day sit and ask people to please register as soon as they can?
Yes. The next all-day sit is May 23rd, Sunday, May 23rd. And if you can sign up, if you can come, of course we hope you're there, and we understand if you can't be there, but it really helps the Enos organizing to know who they can call on and getting organized. So, okay?
I think Sunday is the 25th.
It is the 25th.
Yeah, not the 23rd.
Oh, it's the 25th? Good, thank you. See, that's why I need you. Good thing you're here. Keep me straight. So, the Eightfold Path. the introduction by Judith Regier. Judith Regier, I've met her. I really like Judith Regier. Maybe I've said this before. She was one of the main teachers in the Katagiri lineage. She did all the right things. She did all the right ceremonies. She devoted her entire life to this. I mean, she's an amazing Dharma resource. And she, after I don't know how many decades, said something like, wait a minute, I haven't been paying attention to other parts of my life. I don't know that I was very present in my marriage or with my children or my emotional life. And she really put everything down and just said, I need, this is equally important. I'm saying this because it's all about the middle path and being wise and compassionate. And I think she started to pick it back up now, but for a while she really just needed to, I think she started young, she just, she never got to experience being a human being all the way through. So good on her. We all enter, and some of us are just wildly human, and then you find the path, and that's perfect too. You know, it's just like everybody does it differently. But I want I wanted to remind us. She says the three bases, living the eightfold path to well-being. That's what we're doing, is we're living this life to well-being for ourselves and for everybody. She says it's the how-to of the Buddha way. And I'll remind us that the core of the Eightfold Path is the three bases: wisdom, prajna, concentration, samadhi, and ethics, sila, which is the precepts, which is why we keep focusing on precepts. But we need all of them. They're like a stool with three legs. All three legs of the stool have to be stable and strong for the stool to work as a seat. Our spiritual life is the same. In fact, I think the three bases is one of the most important teachings for 21st century Buddhism. If we understand the three bases, our practice will be integrated. Understanding and using the entirety of the Eightfold Path could correct many of the problems of unbalance in our sanghas and our personal practices, and I would say in the world. Right effort is usually under, where is it usually? I think it's usually under samadhi, right concentration. But where she puts it is right in the center. She says it's the most important. So it seems kind of interesting that we've landed on right effort this week as the heart, as we've been doing a ceremony that's at the heart of the path. Yes, it would be under samadhi or concentration. She says the teaching of the three bases helps me teach and practice in a manner that encourages spiritual integration. As we have seen historically, many teachers and sanghas have been severely damaged by adhering to a lopsided practice. Mostly what I have experienced is ethical misconduct. When Thich Nhat Hanh came to America in the 1970s, he insisted that Americans needed to work with sila ethics to correct our imbalance. What an interesting time we're in, huh? In terms of amplifying that. In my opinion, an understanding of the three-legged stool of training is the antidote to this lopsidedness. Of what use is samadhi, concentration, and jhanas, meditative states, if they're not imbued with wisdom? And what does wisdom serve us if it doesn't penetrate through to our behavior? The purpose of a spiritual life is to align our actions with our understanding. Our ordinary actions in life must show substantial change for the practice of Buddhism to be beneficial. We must become better human beings. I don't know that I would say it quite that way, but it's just like being a kind, present, compassionate, wise human being. If that's not happening, then we all just need to keep helping each other more deeply. By placing right effort in the center of the stool, I am suggesting that right effort is necessary as the source point for all our practice and all the other bases. There are many words for effort. The energy of practice, diligence or determination in practice, enthusiasm, optimism or vigor. Right effort is the middle way. Pema Chodron teaches a very useful phrase for right effort. Not too tight and not too loose. And I have to say that some years ago I woke up from a dream and it was like a little child's, but it wasn't childlike at all. And it said, I mean, whoever was talking to me said, not too tight and not too loose, nice and steady as we go. I also like to use the phrase right amount in conjunction with right effort. What is the right amount of something that will produce well-being in ourselves and others? Nice, huh? Nice encouragement, and it's nice that I know enough about her to know that her life has been living her, not what she thought. So, having said that, life has been living Debbie, and so we'll give her an opportunity to share what feels important to come forward. Oh, yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah, thank you. Here you go.
There you guys are. I'm gonna resist the urge to put rabbit ears on myself. I heard one time somebody's kid, it was during the pandemic, and this guy was working at home and his kid put this whole thing on and he didn't know how to take it off, so he's going to all these meetings as a rabbit. So, in thinking about what I wanted to talk about today, I thought that maybe it would be good to include my way-seeking mind 2.0, kind of catch everybody up. So I'm going to kind of start at the beginning. My family, my biological family, we weren't a close family. We didn't practice any religion. My mother, I think we found out later that she actually had some sort of diagnosable mental illness, but she was prone to fits of rage, and we never really knew when it was going to happen. She never was physically violent with us, but she would throw things and get really mad and then cry, and yeah. And my dad, who actually after I moved out on my own and got to know my dad in a different way, I just absolutely adored him. He's very funny, and he's really sweet. But when I was growing up, he was just that guy behind the newspaper that let my mom pick on me and never stood up for me. And so I think that what I learned in my family of origin was that moving targets usually don't get hit, and that if I showed any sign of weakness at all, or let any of them know that they had affected me in any way, then they won. And so I was just like a blank slate. I thought I was. I don't know if I actually was. I had two brothers. I had an older stepbrother who was in and out of jail a lot. He was an alcoholic, but I think he was also mentally ill. But he was like 8 years older than me, so he was kind of up and out of the house by the time I kind of knew what was going on. And then I have another brother who's about 3 years older than me. And, you know, I wish I had the kind of brothers that were protective, but that wasn't how it went. You know, they were just boys, and they would do mean things and try to blame me for things I didn't do, and, you know, typical stuff. So I was the only one in my family to go to college. My mom immigrated here from Holland when she was 11. And my dad was the first in his family to be born in the United States. Both of them, my mother and my father, were affected by two different Holocausts. You know, my mother, I gradually figured out that my mother was actually Eastern European and probably Jewish, but it was not anything she ever talked about. You know, in my dad's family, they, you know, when they came here, it was after the Ottoman Empire just destroyed everything, and most of his family didn't make it through. So it's interesting, and you know, they both lived through a depression, and I think it really flavored the way they lived their lives and the way they raised their kids. We were supposed to work hard. We weren't supposed to brag. We were Americans. And if you want to learn Dutch, you go learn Dutch, but we're Americans. Yeah, because you know, at the time, I mean, my dad looks like he's Armenian, looked like he was Armenian. And, you know, I remember him telling me about how they had a really hard time when he and my mom went to buy their first house, because he was kind of considered ethnic, which seems weird now. So, I really wanted to go to college because if I was in college, I wouldn't be at home. And I really wanted to do something with my life. But it took me a little while to figure out what it was. So in my early 20s, when I was sort of banging around trying to figure out what I wanted to do, I got involved with a lot of drugs and alcohol. And I got sober when I was around 28, and that was my first introduction to any kind of spiritual ideas at all. And I honestly don't know how long. I think I was in AA like 18 or 20 years, and then at that point I felt pretty stable. And, you know, I've been like a social drinker for the most part, but we'll get to that later. Yeah, so I just stumbled into Buddhism, really. I had a friend who got diagnosed with leukemia, and she was really feeling the need to find some community, some kind of spiritual community. And so she wrote down all the names of these different churches and synagogues and stuff, and she put them all in a hat, and we all had to like pick one, and we had to go there with her. So I picked Stone Creek. So we went. She hated it. She absolutely hated it, and I loved it. It's like, this is so cool. So I continued to go. In the beginning, I really didn't understand any of the Dharma talks. I just wanted to sit. I didn't study anything at all, I think, for the first few years. But what ended up happening is that, you know, as I practiced, Buddhism changed for me. Instead of being a thing that I did, like on a certain day, it was how I lived. So I practiced. I stayed at Stone Creek for about 6 years, and I did Jukai there. But after, I had a falling out with my teacher and my Sangha, and I stopped practicing for maybe a year. And at first I didn't sit at all, and that did not work well for me. So after about 6 months of that, I started sitting at home again, and I started looking for a Sangha, and it was really hard. It was really hard because, you know, the situation that I had at my prior Sangha was rather scandalous, and I just imagined that everybody knew who I was. No matter where I went, they knew who I was. Yeah, so it was hard, and I remember, you know, Joni was being supportive of me doing this, and she's like, we gotta just go to this one last place, because I think you'd really like this person. So we went to Russian River Zendo in Guerneville. And the minute I walked in, I felt like I could breathe again. And I stayed there, I think about 6 years also. I did Jukai again because in my misunderstanding, I thought that the fact that this teacher's name was on my rakusu was like an abomination, and so I burned it. I failed to take into account that it really wasn't about her, you know. My Jukai was about me. But, so I did Jukai again with Darlene. Darlene Cohen and Tony Patchell were a married couple that, they're old Zen Center people, and they moved up here, and they were going to go to Washington because one of Darlene's Dharma friends, Daya, really wanted them to come up and, you know, start a Zendo with her and do all this stuff. And her students found out, and so they did this huge fundraiser, and they built a Zendo on their property. They did it like, you know how the houses in Guerneville are kind of up high? Well, they kind of made like what would have been the garage part into a Zendo. That was very cool. I'm working on talking slower because I could do this in 11 minutes if you want, but I don't think it's a good idea. So, and you know, I had learned a really hard lesson from not practicing for that period of time, both just not sitting and not having a teacher, being with a Sangha. And so when I got to Russian River Zendo, I just jumped in. You know, I was very involved with everything. You know, and I knew going in that Darlene had ovarian cancer and that she was going through, you know how people go through all the chemos till they just don't work anymore. And she was about halfway through that process. And so when I asked her to be my teacher, she's like, I'm gonna die soon, you know. And I said, that's okay. You know, I was happy to kind of get anything I could from her because she was just such an amazing person. When you did Dokusan with Darlene, you know, she was kind of, what is that word? I can't think of it now. She was kind of charming, you know, she was people were drawn to her, and she got a lot of attention. But when you were in Dokusan with her, she was absolutely there. I mean, I just knew that she wasn't thinking of anything else or anyone else, and that was really important to me. I also worked with Tony a lot because Tony was a social worker and I was a physical therapist, and both of us had the experience of being in really difficult situations with people we're trying to help, and he was very helpful to me in that respect. I really think that Darlene and Tony saved me. I brought a hanky. Aww, that was a Joni thing. Joni was like, had these weird habits from like 40 years ago, and I have a whole bunch of her hankies at home, so. In January of 2011, Darlene died, and that was the first time I shaved my head, and I don't really know why I did it. I just did it. It just felt like the right thing to do, and as most of you know, except for that one unfortunate incident a couple months ago, I've never let it grow out at all. I did a practice period at Tassajara in 2013, and I was ordained shortly after that by Tony. And Tony really struggled. We tried as a Sangha to support him as best we could. And Russian River Zendo continued to function, but it became more of like a bare bones practice. Like, you know, we met once a week, and Tony was available for Dokusan, but we didn't do practice periods anymore. We didn't do sessions. We didn't have study groups. And that was hard for me because, you know, I really got a lot out of those things. And I think during the pandemic, you know, Tony, I don't think he's ever gone back to actually having any Zen functions since then. But when I was bugging him to do a practice period, he's like, you should go check out Chris Thornton. She does practice periods. It's his fault. And so I did. And at first, when I was coming to the Sangha, I was still sitting with Tony, but I would come for practice periods. And then, you know, gradually I just, you know, realized that this was just a transition for me. I did not initially feel very comfortable in this Sangha. I thought you were all way too touchy-feely. I've gotten over that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to go to a different Sangha when you've been really comfortable somewhere. So I think I've been practicing here maybe about 12 years. I don't know, I'm not a very good historian. But in April of last year, Chris asked me to study for Dharma transmission. And to be honest with you, I had never even considered it. Because I thought, you know, when you had Dharma transmission, it was because you're going to be a teacher or you're going to be like the head of something. And I thought, well, I'm not going to do any of that. But at that time, and this is how it was about a few years of my life was very difficult. But at the time Chris asked me that, I just felt like somebody had thrown me a lifeline. Joni's health had been declining over a number of years, mostly her mobility. You know, when we first got together, she wasn't athletic, but, you know, she could go for a hike and stuff like that. We used to go kayaking. But, you know, things happened and she went from walking without any assistance to walking with a cane and then a walker. And then she was like wheelchair and bedbound probably the last year. And, you know, we tried to adjust and have some things to do together. You know, we got her an electric wheelchair and we put a lift on the car so every once in a while we could go out to dinner and stuff like that. But towards the end, she knew who I was, but she was not really here. And I became a full-time caregiver and Joni became my practice. And it was really hard. So the last year of her life, she was in and out of the hospital. It was like they were always trying to get like her blood pressure and her fluid retention in the right balance, and they never could do it because they'd fix one thing and the other thing would go. And, you know, she bounced back before from various things, but I could kind of tell that it wasn't going to happen this time. So she died in July. And honestly, the thing I felt most was relieved. God, she's not suffering anymore. You know, and I don't have to worry anymore that I'm taking care of her in the right way. I did toward the end finally get a caregiver when people started telling me I didn't look so good. Get a caregiver. And that was really helpful, and I'm still friends with that person today. In the beginning, my grief was really physical. I could sleep for hours and hours and hours. Unfortunately, I did most of that during the day, so I would be up all night. I was never hungry. I ate anyway, but I was never hungry. Food didn't taste the same. My body hurt. I mean, like everything hurt. And so I think, you know, the first few months I just really kind of holed up and was just sort of trying to come back. And something Chris said to me really helped me. You know, and she said, you know, she said, you walked Joni to the edge, but you came back. And that really, really helped me because, you know, I was just so lost. I mean, I don't know. I was actually really surprised how lost I felt without her. So I kept studying for Dharma transmission, and Chris and I kept having these conversations about whether this was really a good time or not. You know, and I kind of kept changing my mind, and but at some point I just realized this is my path. You know, why not do this? This is obviously my path. I've got my pages mixed up. Oh, okay. So, I'm doing a lot better now. I actually sleep at night most of the time. After 3 or 4 months, I went to a grief counselor, and that was immensely helpful. You know, and I learned some things I don't know if I didn't know them or I just didn't think about them, but one of the things she said to me is that, you know, just because Joni's not here doesn't mean you don't still have a relationship with her. And because you're growing and changing, your relationship with her is going to grow and change. And that was immensely comforting to me. It was really hard for me at first. You know, the last 2 or 3 years had just been so exhausting. You know, I was just frazzled. And it was hard for me. You know, I didn't really care about anything. I didn't really want to do anything. But it got better. Little by little, it got better. And, you know, I used a lot of ritual to do things. Joni was cremated, and I scattered her ashes all over the garden, and I'm telling you, everything's doing really good. And I had kind of divided them up, put them in little baggies, because there were places that I wanted to take her ashes, like Tasahara and the desert and places like that. So I have one more trip to make to Mexico to scatter the last of her ashes. And what was funny is that when I was doing the scattering in the yard, I got her ashes like all over my rocket suit, and they wouldn't come off. So, you know. So, I'm still grieving. I don't know if I'll ever not have a part of me that's grieving. But mostly, I resumed my practice with my unique bundle of delusions. Some of the top 3 are, no one likes me, I don't have any friends, and I'm going to die alone. And, you know, when we're talking about like right effort, you know, one of the things is to prevent the arising of unwholesome states. So, you know, I've examined this enough that, you know, when it pops up for me, I'm like, oh, we're going to do this again. But still, sometimes I get tricked. But I think I'm getting a little bit better at seeing it before it gets me. And another thing with right effort is to to arouse unarisen wholesome states. So in other words, you know, I was never a terribly optimistic person, and I think I got a lot of that from my parents. They were not terribly optimistic. But so we all stayed at Chris's house for 11 days. Oh boy. I was really very anxious about Shiho. I kind of had an idea what was going to go on, but you know, I was having all these unwholesome mental states about imagining myself lighting my robe on fire or falling down when I was bowing, or you know, just stuff like that. And it's hard to really describe the experience in words, but I can tell you what it feels like. But in order to do that, I have to tell you my dirty little secret that I watch dog videos on YouTube when I'm bummed out. And one of my favorite videos, and there's a lot of them like this, is when there's a family and the parents are giving their young child, like, you know, elementary school age, a dog. You know, and they bring this box in and they open the dog. And the kids, without fail, absolutely burst into tears. They're so overwhelmed by the joy. And that's kind of what Dharma transmission felt like to me, except I didn't cry. It was kind of like walking out of a dark tunnel. It was like, I don't remember what that movie was, but there's some movie that starts out in black and white and then goes to color. And it was like that. It was like everything looked the same, but it didn't look the same. So I know you're all dying to know what it was we were actually doing in there. It was really, really powerful because I felt like, you know, what you were saying about being like, I felt like I was being woven into something, you know, like into this lineage of ancestors. And, you know, the weave wasn't too tight. I didn't feel trapped. I didn't feel, you know, uncomfortable. But it also wasn't too loose, so I felt supported. And that was really important for me. Things seem to be coming into focus more for me. I'm starting to get involved in things I want to do. So, here I sit with my brown moccasoo, terrified you're going to ask me something I don't know, which probably you will, because I don't know that much. But I'm deeply grateful for this opportunity. And you stole my ending line. I was going to quote Norman Fisher.
Go for it.
Yeah, when somebody asked Norman, you know, like, how do you be a priest? And he just said, you know, be of service, be humble, and see the Buddha in everyone. Okay, so, oh God, I talked a long time. I was trying to think up something incredibly clever to have you guys talk about, but
Actually, I'm thinking.
do you have something?
Oh yeah, I'm always incredibly clever.
I know.
I thought we could just kind of open it up.
Okay.
But you could share what your incredibly clever idea was, and then we'll see what jumps off of that.
No, I don't know. I really like kind of interactive things, but I just didn't have the energy to do it. But what's your idea?
Oh, I just I want to say I'm really moved. Thank you for I can feel it. Yeah. I mean, rituals are transformative.
Yeah, they really are. We went to Thailand on our honeymoon, and we brought back a spirit house. There's a tradition there to put it like somewhere in your yard. You don't put it facing the street, but it's a place for spirits to go to rest. And I think it was teak or wood or something. And so I decided I would paint it. So I painted it Joni's favorite colors. I had a little urn of her ashes that I put inside, and all these like little figures of things important to her. And that was one of my altars when I was doing Jundo. So, yeah, and I go out there and I talk to her, which is weird, but that's okay. Yeah.
I guess I want to add to that, just so we don't set ourselves or anybody else up. Rituals are transformative, and you're still your same old self. It's continuous practice, you know? I mean, it always is, forever. And I think I wanted to, just a couple of things is, to put in context is it's an interesting thing that other people have burned their rakusus and robes when they felt really, really hurt in different, like when Richard Baker, the thing happened, there were at Zen Center. I mean, it's interesting that people would do, that's what people, I mean, to me there's so much fire and passion in vowing. There's so much, there's something in that it would arise that you would want to burn this religious, I don't understand it, but I did want to just say Debbie's not the first one, and I don't encourage it, please.
Try this at home.
And the other thing is for me entering this. I mean, you just don't know. And one of the things that was interesting, I mean, besides the formalized ritual, there's a lot of form, is there was someone transmitted, Chris Burkhart drove down from Bellingham, Washington, with all of her cook pots in her car because she wanted to help and she wanted to be part of this ritual, which is sort of blows. I mean, I don't know how we would have done it without. And then Eva came, and these. I mean, there was so much help and support, and then from all of you doing what you were doing. But Chris is much stricter than I am, and she would pull me aside and say, "More quiet. There should be more quiet." And I kept trying to get them to be quiet, and we were quiet. But at meals. People, it's interesting, a lot of what happened is people wanted to tell stories about and be witnessed about their upbringing, which is what you just did, is to be like genuinely witnessed, I think, in this human life, and somehow the lotus in the mud, that and it was so sweet and tender and intimate that we were able to do that that it was safe to do that with each other as we were doing really deep and profound ritual. So I'm really noting that that's what you brought here, is this very human life.
And Chris got me to eat vegetables I would never eat. She's an amazing cook. I could not believe
that Chris,
it.
yeah.
Mushrooms and zucchini. It's like I saw them and I thought, no, I can't do this. You should just try. She's fabulous.
Yeah.
Ate like there was no tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, kind of like grief is. It was physically intense. You know, I mean, we ate a lot. We slept like 8 or 9 hours a night, and then inevitably all of us fell asleep at some point during the day and took like an hour's nap, because it was a lot. But I'm really glad that I did it.
So when we do the precepts tonight and forever, we begin with the refuges. So I take refuge in Buddha. I take refuge in Dharma. I take refuge in Sangha as the three treasures, the triple treasure. And I mostly just feel a lot, I don't know how people live their lives without something like this. It's just some deep ground that's groundless that gives us some place to keep returning to in the sea and the waves of it all. And that it's an incredible privilege and gift. I mean, all of it. I just never take it for granted that you're all here and that we're, I mean, to me it's sort of like, excuse me, it's like, huh? You know, it's like, wow, this is, we all have such deep, everybody has such deep lives and really need some place to live it and express it. So I think my predominant feeling, and again, and it continues, is just gratitude. It's just gratitude. That's all. It's nothing special. It's just gratitude, which is, of course, special and not special. So I guess you guys didn't get to say anything too bad. Oops.
Thank you, Debbie.
I was,
Yeah.
thank you, Deb.
Thank you, guys.
I was wondering about your 7 altars the whole week.
It was so cool. We did this thing every morning, and we started doing it at home like 8 or 10 days before. Called a jundo, and it's something they do in monasteries. The priest goes to each altar and offers incense, and I think at Tassajara there's what, like 10 or 12 or something.
I think we were right up there.
Yeah. But it was very cool. You know, I had like one near my front door, one in my kitchen, one out by my pond, and you know, there are certain things you can chant and things that you chant like when you're walking in between and stuff, and it was just so cool. I think I'm a ritual junkie, and I've kind of continued doing an abbreviated version of that. And yeah, it just helps focus everything.
I think everybody said that they wanted to continue that practice. And I mean, my house already is full of altars, and the fact that there were all these people walking around chanting and offering incense, like, you want to put me in happy land? You feed me well and people bow and chant to altars. It's like, hey, I'm okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, everybody. Let's do the Bodhisattva vows. Beings are numberless. I vow to save them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them.